We're ready, Mayor.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Well, good evening and welcome to our City Council meeting of October 20th of 2020. Before we get started, Councilmember Garth Hens is going to offer a word of prayer.
If you'll pray with me. Father, thank you for the beautiful weather. Thank you for the fall season. Thank you for the progress that we've made with this virus and that you've kept us in good shape relative to so many others that are facing hardships. So we are so grateful for that. We're grateful for the opportunity to live in this community. We are grateful for our first responders and for our hospital staff and for the medical community that's helping us in the midst of this. We are grateful for the opportunity to make decisions that are going to impact Nacogdoches for the positive for decades to come. We trust you. We ask for wisdom, for discernment, and for favor to make decisions that are wise and right. In Jesus' name, amen and amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So now I'll call our meeting of October 20th, 2020 to order. And I believe we have a couple of people that have requested to speak in open forum. So our city secretary, Jan Vinson, will you contact our first person, please?
Yes, ma'am. Give me just 1 second.
Of course.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Brown.
Yes, hi.
Give me just a second and you'll be speaking to Mayor Brophy.
Okay.
Good evening. Who am I speaking with?
My name is Thomas Brown.
Okay, Mr. Brown. Before you get started, I have a little, just a brief statement that I'd like to read. We read at the beginning of all of our open forums. It is open forum is the public's opportunity to address the council on any matter related to the city that is not on tonight's agenda. Your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the City Council generally cannot discuss, consider, or take action on matters not listed on tonight's agenda. So you have 3 minutes, and please proceed.
All right. Thank you. Hello, Mayor and City Council of Nacogdoches. My name is Thomas Brown, and I am calling in to voice my strong opposition to Ms. Elena Chapin's rezoning of a Logansport Street property from an R2 single-family dwelling district to an R4 or multifamily dwelling district, aka apartments and rental properties, which will inevitably put numerous culturally and architecturally significant historic properties in jeopardy. Though I am not a Nacogdoches native, my family has owned property in the area since 1858, when my third great-grandfather, August Tubby, immigrated here from Germany. I grew up visiting my grandparents, John and Sarah Tubby, and fell in love with the area. I personally made the move here in 2012, choosing to make Nacogdoches my permanent residence. One of the many reasons I did so as a millennial in his 20s, aside from having a home here, was because of the draw that the oldest town in Texas had for a history buff like myself. It is heartbreaking to see that the city of Nacogdoches' near complete disregard for the significance of culturally and aesthetically important homes in the area, so few of which remain thanks to regressive development like this particular scheme. Much like the fabulous John Schmidt house demolished in the 60s to make room for a Piggly Wiggly, these beautiful, irreplaceable structures are gone when they're gone, and 99% of the time, whatever monstrosity takes their place is infinitely less aesthetically satisfying. There is no replacing them or the beautiful environs they aid in creating for the inhabitants of our city. The city of Nacogdoches' own comprehensive development plan specifically calls for historic preservation, environmental protection, and expanding the overlay of historic districts. That's expanding, not reducing or encroaching upon to the point of scenic spoilage. I worry that Nacogdoches is running the risk of becoming a laughingstock, touting that it's the oldest town in Texas with painfully few remnants now to show for it. We may be the oldest town in Texas, but we are working our hardest to erase any evidence of that claim. I urge those who are listening to compare the aesthetics of our city with those of our alleged sister city, Nacogdoches, Louisiana, or for that matter, any other historic town. We are on the fast track to being one of the most pitiful stewards of history this side of the Mississippi. I request that the lords and ladies of the council place this item back on the agenda and vote to rezone Logansport Street property back to R2 single-family dwellings, and ask that the council continue to take a proactive approach to protecting the last vestiges of 19th century Nacogdoches. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Have a good evening.
You too.
We have another person that has called in, so we will ask Jan Vinson, our city secretary, to please contact the next person.
Mrs. McKinnon? Mrs. McKinnon?
Yes, this is Mary McKinnon.
Hi, Mrs. McKinnon. This is Jan with the city of Nacogdoches. We spoke earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
The mayor's going to speak to you now.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. McKinnon. Before you speak, I do have one thing that a statement that I read before every open forum. So
Wonderful.
let me proceed with that first. Open forum is the public's opportunity to address the council on any matter related to the city that is not on tonight's agenda. Your comments are limited to 3 minutes, and in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, the city council generally cannot discuss, consider, or take action on matters not listed on the agenda. So if you would like to go ahead, your 3 minutes begins now.
Yes, thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Mary, for having me on this call. I am calling to find out, is there a rubric or a checklist, per se, that would give the general public, you know, John Doe, Jane Doe, access to what the council, what the city, what the emergency management system, what the police department, the school district, and the fire department deem as being a terrorist. I know that sounds simple. However, if allegations are made and, you know, Jane Doe isn't able to defend herself publicly, what happens? You know, is there a protocol that the city has in place so that she can or he can openly refute the allegations that have been set before? That's what I'm asking about. Is there something like that in place? How do I find it? And where can I go to access it? I really appreciate the time that the council spends each and every month with all of the city matters. Mayor Brophy, thank you so much for letting me speak. This
You're-
is just a starting point, and I need to have my concerns be validated. Thank you very much.
Okay, you are welcome. We will have someone contact you and do our best to do that this week. And I appreciate the call, and I hope you have a pleasant evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Our next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. So if council would like to remove something for further discussion, they may do so now. If not, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as it's presented.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item number 5 starts our regular agenda, and A is we are going to receive a report, hold a discussion, and give staff direction regarding virtual and in-person city council meetings. And we are going to hear from Mario Canizares, our city manager, and Michael Donnell with our IT department. So Mario, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Mario Canizares, City Manager. As mentioned, this will be a tag team presentation between myself and staff from the Information Technology Department. So I'm going to bring up the slide deck. Then about almost towards the end, I'm going to pull it down so that we can actually do a quick live demo. And then I'll bring up the slide deck again to kind of finish it up and then get direction from council. So bear with me just a moment while I'll pull the presentation up. Maybe. I'm getting
You've got someone across the hall that could.
well, I'm having technical difficulties with the computer kind of freezing on me here.
Oh,
It's not good. Like they're taking over.
They are. Justin is helping you out remotely.
Okay. May have to leave and come back.
We can't hear you, Mario.
Can you all see that?
yes, sir.
All right. I think we're cooking now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And all right. You see the full presentation now?
Yes.
All right. So this is in regards to a discussion with you all about regarding in-person versus virtual council meeting and virtual council meetings. To give you a little bit of background, all in-person meetings were stopped, I believe, in mid-April due to the pandemic. this happened. We experienced this all over the state. So in my previous city, we did the same thing. So a lot of the in-person meetings, whether it be city council meetings, planning and zoning commission meetings, any of the boards and commissions that were involved with any city, for the most part, came to a stop in that early days of the pandemic, obviously to stop the spread of the disease. Soon thereafter, Governor Abbott issued a number of executive orders that loosened the restrictions on the Texas Open Meetings Act, also known as TOMA. What that allowed to happen was to provide for virtual meetings of a governing body. So a lot of cities utilized Zoom and Google Meets and other types of various online platforms so that meetings could still be held by the governing body, but they were not necessarily required to be done in person because of the social distancing issues. Back in summer of this year, so a few months later, as the full council was still under that virtual environment, staff presented a number of options to council to allow for an in-person and virtual meeting format. So it allowed for some council members to come in person, while also allowed for some members who wish to continue to work in the virtual environment. You all recommended that staff pursue this model and to look at purchasing some hardware along with additional software that would be allowed to be installed in the chambers along with information technology so that this model could be employed. As a result, staff did pursue that and has purchased those items, and we have been in the process back earlier this month in early October, did the installation. We've been going through the process of troubleshooting that effort. And then, so now what we'd like to do is just kind of show you if we were to implement this hybrid approach, this virtual and in-person meeting format, we would like to show you kind of what we had in mind as far as the seating arrangement within the chambers. As many of you know, or all of you know, the space itself is quite long and narrow. And so obviously we're going to have to implement some rearrangement of the furniture and the dais to accommodate the in-person format. So I'm going to go over a couple of slides that show the configuration of the space as it is today versus what we would anticipate moving forward. And then I'm going to bring down the presentation and then let information technology go through a brief demo so you can kind of see how the environment will be. So currently, this is the configuration of the current chambers. As you can tell, there with council members that we got 5 folks sitting there at the dais. They're at the top. Towards the bottom or below the dais, there's the city secretary and the city attorney, and then the speaker's podium is there right next to them. So very, very close in proximity. And then you also see where the city manager would be sitting and tech services, or excuse me, technology would be sitting, along where the audience would be sitting if we had obviously full attendance. We have about 46 seats for the public and staff, and there's a configuration. Based on the revised format, this is what we would anticipate. Now, this is while it's been drawn to scale. So we've had Chief Kiplinger and Steve Bartlett to draw out this and to be able to show the distances through measurements, and I believe they are on the line. So if there are some specific questions that council may have, they can certainly answer those. But what you're seeing here is basically the dais as shown on the previous screen. We would have 3 members there at the top, and they would be socially distanced between 6 feet apart. And then we have a couple of members, if you so choose, who could come in and they would be seated there below where the city attorney and city secretary would have been seated. What you see in those red lines are partitions that would be custom built and incorporated into the dais so that there would be some, not only just a space separation, but also a physical barrier between each member. We would also have a barrier in the front of the dais to provide some additional protections for those council members, if they so choose, to come in person that could be seated below. What we also have is obviously a reduction in seats. We go from, I believe, 46 to about 9 to 10, maybe 11 additional seating there in the chambers to allow for the public. And if we had a case or an item before council that required additional seating, we have a number of options. We could direct people to sit upstairs in a holding area. We have a second floor conference room where they could be, and we can help facilitate that. Or we would ask folks to wait outside, and then we would be able to accommodate a few people in and out of the building as needed if we had a seating issue. As you can see, we're looking at reconfiguring where the speaker would be located a little bit further away, quite a bit further away from council and from staff to give the required social distancing. We would certainly separate staff. If staff is in a holding pattern, we would have them be seated in a separate conference room on the first floor. And so if we needed someone from staff to be there as a resource, they would be in the chambers. But if they're waiting for another item to be presented, they would just be in a holding pattern. And then we would just ask that we give that staff member just a few seconds to be able to make it to the council chamber so they can present their item. Certainly, we would request that staff wear a mask while in chambers unless they're presenting or speaking to the council. But the presenters would be in person as opposed to in the virtual environment, which we are now, unless they need some special accommodations because just can't make it. But the preference would be that they would be in the chambers presenting to the members that are live, that are present in the chambers, and then certainly the council members that are virtual would be able to experience that same experience that they have today. So with that, I'm going to bring down my presentation, Mayor, if that's okay, and then turn it over to IT and let them do just a quick review, and then we'll bring that back up again and then get comments and direction from you all. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Matt.
All right. Hey, council. Good to be here again. It's Michael Donnell with IT. Just going to quickly go over and maybe give you a few shots of the chambers. As you can probably see now if I'm pointing to the right camera, the way that this system has been designed, the cameras inside of chamber that normally just record and send to channel 21 will now also serve a dual purpose. It will broadcast that video to the meeting that we'll be in, so that the remote people can see everything that's going on inside of council chambers. The microphones pick up and send the audio directly to you. So everything that, the mics pick up, they hear. So the televisions that you're used to seeing in front of you, those will actually, I'll see if I can get a view of that real quick. Those will show you what the folks on the other side are. So, you can see their faces, you can see the PowerPoint presentations there. Let's get another shot here of the television. Those are the big TVs, that point towards the audience. So everything that's on the televisions in here will be the PowerPoints and the faces of the remote folks. Essentially what the equipment did was it just, it's called an audio video bridge. It got the microphones and televisions in council chambers hooked up to the basically the Google Meet software that we use. It's actually generic enough that we could use any meeting software in here. And so this is going to be available to council, whichever board members, and hopefully everything is coming through okay and looks good for you there. But yeah, basically, to answer your question earlier, Mayor, because of the way this stuff works, there's going to be a little thing hanging out that represents what gets broadcasted to the TV. It's the PC that, facilitates all this. So there are opportunities where you might see, yourself twice in there. But I think when we get to a normal session, you won't actually see that. You'll see the PowerPoint presentation in its place. And also the way you configure remotely the way your screen layout looks. You can have multiple options of a tiled layout, so it has what's known as the Brady Bunch effect, so you have everyone in the little squares all at once. There are other options where you can make folks show up more prominently on the screen and everyone else gets put to the side. If you would like help going through and testing out some of those different configurations, I would say please get with IT on a one-on-one basis between now and whenever our first hybrid meeting is, so that we could work out any technical difficulties or just kind of show you some tips and tricks if need be. But we'd love to help you if you'd like to see that too. And with that, does anyone have any questions for me? Would you like to see any more maybe camera angles in chamber, etc.?
Let's start with Mr. Bolden. And do you have any questions for Michael or for Mario?
No, I mean, after looking at the configuration, I won't have an issue being in person.
Okay. Councilmember Hens.
Same as Mr. Bolden. I've got no problem. I like the way it's spaced out. Seems like we're making the best of a tough situation, but looks good to me.
Okay. Councilmember Anderson.
I am, for now anyway, going to remain remote, but I really like the setup. I think it's very well thought out. I'm glad that we have that technology, not just for pandemic purposes, but for all kinds of other purposes going forward. And as a former IT guy, I'm a little jealous that I didn't get to play with it and setting it up.
Okay. Councilmember Fisher.
Yeah, my only question was going to be about, what would happen if we had more people come from the public who wanted to speak. But the city manager answered that, and I think that makes sense. The plan for that makes sense, and it looks great to me. I don't really have, other than that, feedback or anything. I think it looks great.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions and concerns. One is, will the public be allowed, if they don't feel comfortable coming in person, will they still be allowed to call in, whether it's open forum or speak to an agenda item? That's one of my questions. So can you respond to that?
We can.
Yes, ma'am. Certainly, it is my understanding that it's both. It's both options. They can come in person, or they can continue to do what's been used so far, is to be able to do the call in. And I don't know if the city attorney would like to elaborate on that. If I'm missing something, Jeff.
How can I miss that opportunity?
It's like we rehearsed this. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Now, city manager is absolutely right. Although we have referred to this as somewhat of a hybrid form, actually, it's either viewed, we're either back to normal function, meeting function, or virtual. So we're either fish or fowl for purposes of the act and the orders in place now. So, Mayor, great question. We would actually, even though certain council members would be present in person, the fact that other council members would be attending virtually, then it puts us in the category of a virtual meeting. And so it would, I guess it affords really the best of both worlds. Persons could attend in person, in chambers, or they would have the opportunity to use the video capabilities to participate, whether they had a comment on an agenda item or for open forum. So they would have both opportunities, and it would be treated, I guess, if we boil it down legally, as a virtual meeting.
Okay, thank you. And I guess the city secretary would be in charge of for open forum, we had limited that to the first 5 that would sign up in person, and she will be able to coordinate that with the phone calls and those that are in person. Is that correct?
That would be
Yes.
correct. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So my next one is a comment. I just wanted to make sure people understood that I hope this doesn't happen, but if our should go up or a council member has a cold or or has to go out of town that have been attending in person, we can float in and out. So if we have a reason that we need to do virtual, just because we start back in the council chambers, we can still participate remotely if that occurs. And so I just wanted to sort of make that comment. The last question I had was about the air circulation. That room is not very large, and because COVID is airborne, I think there's a little bit of concern and nervousness about how much time we would be spending in there at one sitting and about the air circulation. So is there anything special about the air in that room or not?
Let me see. I believe Chief Kiplinger is on the line, and he is overseeing facilities. I'm going to see if maybe he can maybe expand on that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So there's nothing, there's no changes have been made at this point, but we are taking a look at what changes can be made within the existing infrastructure within the building. As you know, that City Hall facility is quite old. The renovations were quite some time ago, and so making some of those modifications are a little more challenging on their own without a more significant impact on the building. So we're taking a pretty broad look at reconfiguring that space and also the other spaces that are auxiliary to it in order to make a good informed, give you the information you need to make a good informed decision going forward. So the short answer, not yet. The middle term answer is we're looking to see what we can do. The long term answer is we're looking very broadly at other options for council.
Okay. Including possible air purifiers, I guess, temporarily.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we will be doing is fogging the rooms prior to the meetings and following the meetings, and so any of the virus that's in the room or that potentially is in the room, we'll be able to mitigate that. But we will take a look at those other options as well.
Okay. And is there not a plan to check temperatures, or, I mean, we're requiring masks be worn. Mario mentioned that. Are there any other precautions that we are taking that we have advised other groups to do?
So what I would propose that we do is follow the current CDC guidance on temperature taking and asking people if they have any symptoms. That guidance does change pretty often. And so my position at this point is that somebody from Fire and Rescue will be outside the meeting room to make sure that we're following whatever the most up-to-date guidance from the CDC is.
Okay, great. Thank you. Council members, do you all have any other additional questions? We covered a lot. Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Yes, I had 2 other quick questions. My understanding, and I may be incorrect, but I just wanted to clarify, I'm assuming it is still correct that we cannot require attendees of the city council meetings to wear masks. Is that correct, Jeff?
That's a great question and a somewhat complicated one. There could be some opportunity for, and I'm not going to touch on issues of citations. There's warnings and things that go into to all those proceedings before one could issue a citation. But we would probably have the opportunity to exclude somebody from chambers for not following those guidelines, not issuing a citation, but exclude them from the chambers.
Okay. That certainly makes a difference. My other question is also for you, Mr. Davis. Do we have any notion at this point whether or not these temporary changes to the Open Meetings Act will become long-term changes?
I haven't seen anything specifically on that. I will say that today I get, I guess, almost daily updates from the Texas Municipal League and some wonderful briefs on the current issues of the day concerning Corona. I read one today. As a matter of fact, I think we're up to about 130 something, 140 of them. I have recently read that the governor has extended, largely in 30-day increments, extending the order allowing for virtual meetings, for the relaxation of certain parts of the Open Meetings Act. I haven't seen anything specifically long-term that might be a change. Those things, once we get past this time, and the order is no longer needed to be in place, I think probably from a procedural standpoint, from a constitutional standpoint, that any changes to Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, that's where we find the Open Meetings Act, would have to come from the legislature.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, so anyone else? Mrs. Fisher?
Yeah, just a clarification, and thank you, Mayor, for asking all of those questions. Those were really helpful. Clarification on other people members of the public who do not feel comfortable coming in person, participating virtually. I know that the way that we're doing it right now is that people who want to participate in open forum, we're calling them on the phone, but if you're presenting or have something to do with a particular agenda item, then you're participating via video. Would that be the same, or would members who come to participate in open forum be allowed the opportunity to participate via video also?
Mayor, would you like for me to, Mr. Gonzalez,
Sure.
would you like me to address that? That's a great question. So that kind of takes us back, I think, to our discussion of a few minutes ago, that this would be treated for legal purposes as a virtual meeting. And so whether an individual wanted to participate in open forum by video, I believe they'd have the right to do that. Also, if there was a particular agenda item that they wanted to speak on, I think also they would have that opportunity to do that either in person or through video.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and Mr. Bolden or Mr. Hens, are you all, any comments or questions, further discussion? No.
No,
Okay.
I've heard a lot of good comments.
Can you repeat that, please?
I said, no, I've listened to a lot of great comments.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we are going to move to agenda item B, receive a report, hold discussion, give staff regarding fire prevention activities. We're going to hear from our Fire Marshal, Division Chief Mike Brown. Good evening.
Good evening, Council. Apologies for technical difficulties on my end. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I've been asked to speak as October is our nationally historic fire prevention month. And as such, I wanted to give you a quick overview of a couple of the activities that we're doing this month, a couple of aspects of our fire prevention program. Basically, our fire prevention program consists of 4 goals, and the goals, as you see, are to reduce the frequency, the severity of any fires that might happen. Also to reduce any injuries that result from those fires if they do occur. And the last goal, of course, is to enhance firefighter safety. I'm kind of fond of that one myself. In our prevention program, it really consists of 4 main planks, and those planks being planning, investigation, public education and inspections. Tonight, I'd like to focus on those last 2 points, public education and inspections. And as you can see with my little asterisk in the corner, COVID-19, of course, has affected our operations tremendously as it affected the nation as a whole. ISD. We would also respond to county schools upon request. And basically those operations consisted of a pub ed team. Those were individuals who have received additional training and were motivated and enjoy presenting, especially to children. And they would go to each school throughout the month and present a program. Those folks would be assisted by an engine company. We bring a truck of firemen and firefighters and let them demonstrate their truck and show all the cool stuff to the kids, as well as go through a formal fire prevention program. Unfortunately, we've had to change our operations due to COVID. And the reason that we've done that is to reduce risk, is what it boils down to. We wanted to avoid asking children to gather in large gatherings. We wanted to prevent firefighters potentially exposing children to COVID. Being first responders, we sustain a higher risk potentially of coming into contact with those that are COVID positive. And the last thing that we want to do is to spread that to our school children. Additionally, this school year, I can't imagine how the students, the teachers, the parents are dealing with this. We wanted to avoid any further school disruption. And so I know that us coming, while it's very important, is also, in a way, a certain level of disruption to school activities. And we wanted to be mindful of that and not inject yet another encumbrance upon those people that are teaching our children. So we're trying to kind of scale back our operations, but still deliver a product. And so what we're doing this year is we are providing fire prevention materials, coloring books, brochures, the usual tchotchkes to children, and we are delivering those to schools upon request, offering them up to the same people that we normally serve. And additionally, we are in the process of creating a fire prevention video. And there's a lot of these that exist in the marketplace, but what we wanted to do is utilize our local guys. And so that the faces that the children see and that the teachers see are the same people that are jumping off the big red trucks and serving our community every day. We'll be partnering with, the SFA Early Childhood Center. I'm sorry, it was a childhood lab when I went there a million years ago. The Early Childhood Center has volunteered to partner with us to help create that video. They have some talented people there, and they're educators. And while our guys are talented, we certainly can use the assistance from that outside source. Moving along, our inspections program was also impacted. Inspections is a key facet of our prevention program. During pre-COVID times, if you will, our goal was to inspect every single occupancy, every commercial residential occupancy within the city limits. And we were pretty successful with that over the years. Of course, we would perform technical code inspections as required. And unfortunately, due to COVID, and again, for the purposes of risk reduction and to reduce community spread, we scaled back some of those activities. But this is such a key aspect of our operations that we sort of prioritized. And so what we chose to do is to identify those, what we call in the fire service, target hazard and high hazard occupancies. Target hazards are those occupancies that presents the potential for high losses of life, schools, assembly occupancies, nightclubs, restaurants, churches, places where there's a large congregation of people, and that if everything went wrong, then we would potentially be looking at catastrophic results. And so we are conducting those inspections ongoing. The high hazard occupancies are those occupancies that are dangerous merely by the function that they perform. Fuel storage depots, grain elevators, industrial occupancies, those places that are just kind of dangerous by what they do. Those people are still going to be receiving inspections from our department. Additionally, we're continuing, of course, state mandated occupancy inspections. Those would be schools, hospitals, nursing homes, where there's an actual state law that says we have an annual duty to inspect those facilities. Those are, of course, being conducted. And then technical code inspections for new construction continue to occur. Those were suspended for a little while, more from a practical sense than from an administrative. Construction had virtually ceased during the initial phases of COVID until the world kind of figured out where we stood and what we could do and what level of comfort the public had. And of course, last and not least, we're continuing our fire hydrant inspection program. We flow hydrants to make sure that they're operating correctly. We check the valves and the appurtenances that belong to the fire hydrant. We paint, we mow around those so that they're visible, easily visible when responding. And then we're still responding to any inspections that are driven by requests and especially complaint. If a citizen reaches out and has seen something that's concerning to them that they believe to be a danger to life safety, we of course respond to those. So having said that, if I could hit the final portion of our discussion, I'd like to ask council for a little bit of guidance, specifically with two questions and any questions that you might have for me. Number one being, how are we doing? And number two, what guidance could you provide to us, to the fire department, especially our fire prevention division? What direction would you like us to go? And are there any changes that you see that you'd like implemented?
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We will start this time with Councilmember Hens.
I would imagine it's been really difficult because a lot of the work that you guys do on the back end to do the inspections, I want to say Chief had given us a rundown of some of the notes you take on the building structures and what that looks like. I know for our pharmacies, he pointed that out for me, and they talk about, as we do remodels, it's important for you guys to be able to see what that looks like, and there were sketches or digital sketches. That way, if there is an incident, it's not like you're walking in blind. And so I would imagine that's part of what's had to be sacrificed during this time. But I think that's amazing. I don't really have any great suggestions for workarounds during COVID, but in general, I think you guys are doing an awesome job. I think that's a great idea. That was really comforting to know that it's not just walking into buildings blindly, but that you have some, not blueprints. I appreciate that it's not that detailed, but enough to be really helpful to keep our firemen safe. I can only imagine how intense that would be. So I wish I had something brilliant and creative to help you during this time, but overall, I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Anderson.
Yes, for the most part, I'd like to thank you for all that you're doing, and I really appreciate the fact that with especially the elementary school students, that y'all have found ways to be creative at a difficult time to still get the educational information out there, because I do think that is very important, because without you guys sort of presenting that to them, those are things that a lot of kids will never hear outside of school. So that's, to me, a pretty crucial aspect, and I'm grateful that y'all have found creative ways to do that. And beyond that, just thank you for all that y'all do and for being creative in an especially difficult time.
Thank you.
And Councilmember Fisher.
Amen. I couldn't have said it, honestly, I couldn't have said it better. Also, she really enjoyed the presentation and would not stop talking throughout the entire thing. So I'm apologizing in advance. But yeah, I mean, I think that particularly the kids education program was, I remember the presentation on this last year, and I had thought about how that was going to be a challenge. And so I think that the idea of having you guys, of having Nacogdoches, I do think that makes a difference versus some stock, which I'm sure, there are great videos, but stock videos of people who don't live and work in this community. And so I appreciate not just the creativity, but the effort that it's taking you guys to pull that together. And again, I mean, I wish I had something brilliant to say. I do not. I mean, I think that you guys are doing the best that you can with the situation that we're in. And thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bolden.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's a great program you have with the elementary students. And I was totally surprised when I read an article about how many lives are lost and property damage because of young kids playing with matches and etc. But it also, in that article, it stated that a lot of the parents were at blame because they left items that made that kids are curious about, matches, cigarette lighters, accelerant, certain things. Is there any type of program to help with that as far as the parents of the students at the elementary school?
We do not currently have something geared specifically towards parents. That is something we can definitely evaluate and move towards. We do have some community outreach that is geared at adults. It's not nearly as pervasive as the school children are. It's a little bit easier under normal circumstances because we kind of have a captive audience under those circumstances. We have, I know in some of our festivals, we have established tables and booths to push out some of that information, but we could certainly look at a more formal approach to reaching the adult population.
Okay, thank you. And y'all really do a great job with fire detectives, especially in elderly homes. Overall, the program is really great. I mean, all of the things that you do for the community is really great. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Of course. Thank you, Mr. Bolden. So I would concur with Mr. Bolden. I think that if there's a way to do it, there should be something we can do for parents of young children or families and help in that area. That would be the only suggestion I can actually think of. You know, it's funny because you care so much about our safety, and I don't know that you all realize as firefighters how much we care about yours, and how grateful we are that you all that went to California to fight fires returned home safely, and we appreciate that work that you did. And we also are anxious that you get your extra set of gear that we approved from that grant. I don't know when that comes in, but I know that that is needed and necessary and helps to protect you also. So those were the only comments that I had to make, and I hope you got a little bit of answers of what you were seeking.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input. Thank you very much for the support of our daily operations, allowing us to go to California and bring back a tremendous amount of training and experience. And I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Good night.
Good night.
Let's see, before we move on, we're going to, we've had a couple of questions, and we're going to revisit item 5A just for some clarification on the public calling in. So I'm going to ask our city manager, Mario Canizares, would you please address that for us?
Sure, Mayor, thank you. Just a quick piece of clarification. I know it was mentioned or described earlier about those that are in that virtual format. Again, as the city attorney said, if it's all or none, and so if one's in that virtual environment, it's a virtual meeting. While certainly we do have the option of allowing residents to speak via video virtually, I think the best practices that's been employed around the state for all governmental entities is to allow it to be done via phone. And the reason is just trying to just, we've had incidents, and you probably have seen it, embarrassing incidents where there's been video bombing or Zoom bombing where people have received the link and have done things inappropriately. And so, unfortunately, sometimes you just can't unsee those things. And so the preference would be, and again, our office would recommend that certainly if you're in person, obviously you're in person. If you're in a virtual setting, that we do the protocol that we've been using, which is the phone call, reaching out to the individual, signing up, reaching out to the individual, letting them speak like they did this evening. And at least if something is inappropriate said, then that can be muted as opposed to the visual situation that may be very difficult and hopefully not provide any embarrassment for anyone here for our organization. So I just wanted to clarify that and just make sure that we're not missing the boat on something that was said earlier.
Okay, thank you. Does any council member have additional questions at this time? I don't see any hands. Okay.
Okay, well, thank you. That was it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next item on our agenda is listed as an executive session. However, before we're going to pause for a moment, and our city attorney has a statement that he's going to make at this time.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. I appreciate that very much. In anticipation or in preparation for tonight's executive session regarding consultation on legal matters, my office has undertaken quite a bit of legal research. However, in the last 24 or really maybe 36 hours, an additional legal question has arisen, a very valid and I think a very important legal issue on this particular topic or for our executive session tonight, and the answer of which I will say that I need to do some additional legal research on my end. I think in order for us to have a completely meaningful discussion on these matters, it is important that I conduct that research. So with that said, I would ask respectfully that with regard to tonight's executive session, in consultation on various legal matters, particularly concerning Logansport Street, that this be carried over to the next available city council meeting in order for that issue to be fully researched. I would note, Mayor, that with regard to tonight's executive session, if one reviews the agenda, there is no action item once we come out of executive session set for tonight. So I would ask that this be put off until the next available meeting, and so those answers can be more fully researched.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Davis. Council members, is there anyone that is in opposition to this? Does anyone have a problem with us postponing this for the reasons that Mr. Davis explained? No. Okay. Thank you very much. So that concludes our meeting of October 20th of 2020, and I hope you all have a very pleasant rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Councilmember Fisher. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.